Rain didn't just fall that night in Seattle. It felt like the sky was trying to wash the city clean of sins. Specifically, Caleb Sterling's sins. At 11:42 p.m., a heavy oak door slammed shut on Fifth Avenue, echoing like a gunshot. On the wet pavement lay a bruised, shivering woman named Genevieve, and next to her a single trash bag containing 3 years of marriage. Caleb didn't even look her in the eye when he said it. "You're a leech, Jen. Go back to the gutter where I found you." He locked the deadbolt. He thought he was taking out the trash. He had no idea he had just thrown away the keys to the kingdom. The silence inside the Sterling penthouse was deafening, a stark contrast to the storm raging outside. Inside, the air smelled of expensive leather and aged scotch. Caleb Sterling stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the figure of his wife retreat into the darkness below. He took a sip of his drink, his hand trembling slightly, not from guilt, but from the adrenaline of finally doing what he told himself was necessary. "Is she gone?" The voice came from the spiral staircase. Beatrice Galloway walked down her heels, clicking on the marble. She was everything Genevieve wasn't. Sharp-polished old money and ruthless. She wore a silk robe that cost more than Genevieve made in a year of waitressing. "She's gone," Caleb said, turning his back on the window. "It's done, B. The divorce papers are in the bag. She'll sign them if she wants a stray dollar for food." Caleb had met Genevieve 3 years ago at a diner off I-5. She was quiet, beautiful in a fragile way, with no family and no history. To a narcissist like Caleb, she was the perfect canvas. He could mold her play the savior, the knight in shining armor. He was a rising architect, then hungry for validation. Marrying the poor orphan girl gave him a rush of superiority. But 3 years later, Caleb's architecture firm, Sterling and Company, was bleeding money. He needed capital. He needed connections. He didn't need a wife who clipped coupons and patched his shirts. He needed a wife whose last name opened bank vaults. Beatrice Galloway, the daughter of a steel magnate, was that ticket. "You did the right thing, darling," Beatrice purred, wrapping her arms around his waist. "She was holding you back. You're meant for greatness, not mediocrity. Besides, what could a nobody like her possibly offer a man like you?" Caleb smirked, the cruelty settling into his features. "She was a charity case. I just finally stopped the donation." Down on the street, the charity case was fighting for her life. Genevieve dragged the black trash bag toward the bus stop shelter. The rain soaked through her thin cardigan, chilling her to the bone. Her hands were raw, her eyes red, but strangely she wasn't crying anymore. The shock had frozen her tears. She sat on the cold metal bench, shivering. She replayed the last hour in her head. The accusations. Caleb screaming that she was a burden, that she embarrassed him at galas with her silence, that she was nothing but a beggar he had picked up to polish his own ego. He had thrown a check at her $500. Severance, he had called it. She looked at the crumpled piece of paper in her hand. $500 for 3 years of cooking, cleaning, supporting his dreams, and tolerating his temper. She ripped the check in half, then in quarters. She let the pieces flutter into the muddy puddle at her feet. She wasn't Genevieve the beggar. Not really. But she had played the part so well for so long to hide from a past that was far more dangerous than poverty. She reached into her bra and pulled out the only thing she had managed to save before Caleb shoved her out a small rusted iron key on a silver chain. It wasn't a key to a house. It was a key to a safety deposit box in Zurich. "You think I'm nothing, Caleb," she whispered to the rain, her voice cracking. "You think I'm the dirt on your shoe." A black sedan splashed by, spraying dirty water onto her legs. She didn't flinch. Genevieve closed her eyes. The meek, terrified wife died on that bench. The woman who opened her eyes moments later had a gaze of cold steel. She stood up, leaving the trash bag of clothes behind. She didn't need Caleb's old t-shirts. She didn't need the memories. She needed a phone. And she needed to make a call she hadn't made in 7 years. The next 3 days were a blur of survival. Genevieve, or Jen, as she had let Caleb call her, slept in a 24-hour laundromat on 4th Street, curled up behind the vending machines. She washed her face in McDonald's bathrooms. She looked every bit the homeless woman Caleb accused her of being. But her mind was sharpening. On the 4th morning, she walked into the public library. She didn't go to the fiction section. She went straight to the computers. She logged in as a guest and typed a name into the search bar, Silas Pellington. The results flooded the screen. Pellington Industries, CEO, reported ill. Who will inherit the Pellington Empire? The search for the lost heiress continues. Stock prices wobble as board of directors. Panic. Silas Pellington, the man who owned half the real estate in New York, shipping lines in Europe, and tech firms in Asia, one of the wealthiest men alive, and her grandfather. 7 years ago, Genevieve hadn't been a waitress. She was Genevieve Pellington, the sole heir to a dynasty. But the pressure had been suffocating. Her parents had died in a plane crash when she was 10, leaving her alone with Silas, a man who loved money more than people. When he tried to arrange a marriage for her at 21 to a man 3 times her age to secure a merger, she ran. She faked her death in a boating accident, changed her name, and vanished into the working class of America. She wanted love. She wanted a simple life. She thought she found that with Caleb. She looked at the screen, reading an article about Caleb Sterling. Sterling and company announces engagement to Beatrice Galloway. New power couple to renovate the historic waterfront. The waterfront. That was Pellington land. Caleb wasn't just marrying Beatrice. He was using Beatrice's money to try and buy land from her own grandfather's company. A fire ignited in her chest. Caleb had treated her like garbage because she was poor. Now he was trying to steal from her family because he wanted to be rich. She stood up her chair, scraping loudly against the floor. The librarian shushed her, but Genevieve didn't hear it. She walked out of the library and headed toward a pawn shop on 2nd Avenue. She had one item left of value, a small diamond stud earring she had sewn into the lining of her coat years ago just in case. The pawnbroker, a greasy man named Earl, squinted at it. "I'll give you $50. Looks fake." "It's a flawless 2-carat diamond cut by Cartier in 1998, Genevieve said, her voice dropping an octave, adopting the posh, commanding accent she had buried for years. "Look closer, Earl, or I walk." Earl blinked, surprised by the tone coming from a woman in a mud-stained cardigan. He put his loupe to his eye. His eyebrows shot up. "All right, lady. Chill. 400. 800. And I need a suit. A clean one." She walked out with $750 and a direction. She went to a thrift store and bought a vintage oversized blazer and trousers. She bought cheap peroxide and dyed her brown hair a striking platinum blonde in a gas station sink. She cut it sharp a bob that screamed authority. She looked in the cracked mirror of the restroom. The soft, doe-eyed girl Caleb loved to bully was gone. Staring back was a woman who looked like she could cut glass with her jawline. She used the remaining change to take a bus to the financial district. She stood in front of the Pellington Tower, a glass monolith that pierced the clouds. The security guard at the front desk sneered as she approached. "Deliveries are in the back, sweetheart." Genevieve didn't stop walking. She slammed her hand on the marble desk. "I'm not here to deliver. I'm here to collect." "Do you have an appointment?" The guard scoffed, reaching for his radio. "Tell Arthur Vance," she said, naming the company's oldest and most loyal attorney, "that the little bird has returned to the nest, and tell him—" She paused, her eyes flashing. "Tell him I'm ready to sign the papers." The guard hesitated. Little Bird was a code name whispered in company legends, a name Silas used for his lost granddaughter. "I'm not calling Mr. Vance for a street rat. Call him!" she roared. The lobby went silent. It wasn't a scream of desperation. It was a command of absolute power. 5 minutes later, a silver-haired man in a three-piece suit came sprinting out of the private elevator. Arthur Vance, now in his 60s, looked at the platinum-blonde woman in the thrift store suit. He stopped dead in his tracks. He looked past the cheap clothes, past the dyed hair, and saw the eyes. Pellington eyes. "Miss Genevieve," Arthur whispered, tears welling in his eyes. "Hello, Arthur," she said coolly. "I need a bath. I need a lawyer. And then I need to buy an architecture firm." Arthur straightened up, signaling the security to stand down. "Which firm, ma'am?" Genevieve smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing Arthur had ever seen. "Sterling and Company." The elevator ride to the 80th floor of the Pellington Tower was silent, save for the hum of machinery that sounded like a gathering storm. Arthur Graves. The senior counsel, who had served the family for 40 years, stood with his hands clasped behind his back, stealing glances at Genevieve. She was still wearing the thrift store suit, her hair chemically bleached and choppy, but the air around her had changed. She no longer smelled of rain and desperation. She radiated a cold, terrifying resolve. "Your grandfather is in the east wing of the penthouse," Arthur said softly as the doors dinged open. "He has not been well, Genevieve. The grief of losing you 7 years ago took a toll that no amount of money could fix. He stopped eating. He stopped going to the board meetings. He simply waited to die." Genevieve's jaw tightened. "He tried to sell me Arthur. He tried to marry me off to a 60-year-old oil tycoon to secure a pipeline deal. I didn't leave because I wanted to. I left to survive." "I know." Arthur sighed, bowing his head. "And he knows it too. He has spent every day since regretting it." They walked through the double mahogany doors. The penthouse was exactly as she remembered, cold museum-like, filled with statues that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. In the center of the vast living room, sitting in a wheelchair facing the fireplace, was Silas Pellington. He looked small. The titan of industry, the man who made senators tremble, was now just a pile of bones in a velvet dressing gown. "Silas," Genevieve said. Her voice wavered just for a second. The old man's head snapped up. He turned the wheelchair slowly. When his cloudy eyes landed on her, he gasped a dry, rattling sound. He tried to stand, but failed, collapsing back into the leather seat. "Jenny," he whispered. "Is it? Are you a ghost?" Genevieve walked across the Persian rug. She knelt beside him. She didn't hug him. She took his cold, trembling hand in hers. "I'm not a ghost, grandfather. I'm the consequence of your actions, and I'm the only hope this family has left." Silas wept. It was a shocking sight. He gripped her hand with surprising strength. "I was wrong. I was a fool. I thought power was the legacy. But without you, the silence was unbearable. They are circling Jenny. The board. The competitors. They want to carve up Pellington Industries like a Thanksgiving turkey. I have no one." "You have me," Genevieve said, standing up. The softness vanished from her face, replaced by the steel she had forged in the fires of her marriage to Caleb. "But we do this my way. No arranged marriages, no controlling my life. I run the company. I make the decisions. You retire and recover." Silas looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the change. The frightened girl was gone. "The company is yours," he breathed. "It always was." "Good," Genevieve said. She turned to Arthur. "Arthur, get the legal team. We need to restructure the ownership immediately. And Arthur, yes, Miss Pellington, get me a stylist, get me a trainer, and get me a dossier on Sterling and Company, specifically their debt profile." Arthur raised an eyebrow. "Caleb Sterling, the architect. He's a small fish, ma'am." "He's a fish that just swallowed a hook," Genevieve said coldly. "He just doesn't know I'm holding the line." The next 3 weeks were a grueling metamorphosis. Genevieve didn't just change her clothes. She rewrote her biology. She hired a speech coach to completely erase the soft, hesitant cadence she had adopted as Jen the wife. She lowered her pitch, slowed her tempo, and learned to speak in the declarative. She stopped apologizing. Physically, the transformation was weaponized glamour. The choppy platinum bob was refined by a celebrity stylist into a sharp architectural cut that framed her face like a helmet of white gold. Her wardrobe shifted from oversized thrift finds to tailored Italian suits, white-black charcoal. Sharp lines, high heels that sounded like hammers on the pavement. But the real work was in the war room. Genevieve spent 18 hours a day in the Pellington archives. She learned every asset, every liability, and every vulnerability of the empire she had abandoned. And she paid special attention to Caleb Sterling. "Report," she barked one Tuesday morning, slamming a folder onto the glass conference table. Arthur and a team of 3 forensic accountants jumped. "Sterling and Company is insolvent, essentially," the lead accountant. A nervous man named Mr. Henderson explained. "Caleb Sterling has leveraged his personal assets to fund the Skyline project. He's gambling everything on landing the contract to redevelop the Pellington waterfront. If he gets that contract, he's rich. If he doesn't, he crashes," Genevieve finished. "Hard." Henderson nodded. "He's currently living on credit extended by the Galloway family. Beatrice Galloway's father is co-signing his loans, but only on the condition that Caleb secures the Pellington deal within 30 days. If he fails, the Galloways pull the funding, and Caleb goes to prison for fraud. He falsified some collateral documents 2 years ago." Genevieve smiled. It was a terrifying, shark-like smile. "He committed fraud. He listed his wife, the previous identity, as a guarantor on a loan without her knowledge. He forged your signature." The air in the room dropped 10 degrees. Genevieve looked at the document Henderson slid over. There it was. Her name. Genevieve Sterling. A forged signature scrawled by Caleb's hand, putting the very life he threw away on the line for his ambition. "He used me as collateral," she whispered, "and then he threw me out." She stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the city. Somewhere out there, Caleb was waking up in silk sheets next to Beatrice, thinking he had won. "Arthur," she said, her back to the room. "Yes, ma'am." "Buy the bank that holds his loans, not the debt. Buy the bank." Arthur choked on his water. "The whole bank, ma'am." "That's a regional lender. It will cost 400 million. Do it. Through a shell company. Call it Nemesis Holdings. Once we own the bank, we own his mortgage, his office, his car, and the shirt on his back. And the waterfront contract. Oh, he's going to pitch for it." Genevieve turned around, her eyes gleaming. "The Pellington Annual Gala is in 2 days. It's a masquerade ball this year. I will be making my debut as the new CEO. Caleb Sterling will be there to beg for the contract." She picked up a letter opener, testing the blade against her thumb. "Let him come. Let him pitch. I want him to look me in the eye and sell his soul to the very woman he discarded." The Pellington Annual Gala was the social event of the decade, held at the Grand Pierre Hotel. The ballroom was transformed into a Venetian dreamscape. Chandeliers dripped with crystals, an orchestra played haunting waltzes, and the elite of New York hid their faces behind masks of feathers, gold, and velvet. Caleb Sterling adjusted his bow tie in the mirror of the hotel lobby restroom. He looked tired. The circles under his eyes were dark, hidden only slightly by the expensive black domino mask he held in his hand. "You look tense," Beatrice said, emerging from a stall in the ladies' room. She had insisted on checking his appearance. She wore a crimson dress that slashed across her chest and a mask encrusted with rubies. She looked like a drop of blood in the snow. "I need this contract bare," Caleb snapped, losing his cool for a second. "The bank called again today. They said there's been a change in management, and they're auditing all high-risk loans. If I don't walk out of here with the Pellington seal of approval, they call the loan on Monday." Beatrice brushed lint off his shoulder, her touch possessive and heavy. "Relax. My father made the calls. The old man Silas is a vegetable. The rumor is his granddaughter has returned to take over. Some spoiled brat who's been partying in Europe for 7 years. She won't know a blueprint from a napkin. Charm her. Dazzle her. And if that doesn't work..." Beatrice smirked, patting her clutch where a heavy envelope lay. "We have leverage on the board members." "I heard the granddaughter is difficult," Caleb muttered. "She's a woman." Beatrice laughed cruelly. "And you, my darling, are the master of manipulating women. Look what you did with that stray dog you married. You had her eating out of your hand for 3 years before you kicked her to the curb." Caleb flinched. The memory of Genevieve sitting in the rain flashed in his mind. He pushed it away. She was weak. This Pellington heir. She'll be different. Just get the signature, Caleb. They entered the ballroom. It was a sea of anonymity. Waiters passed around champagne. The air buzzed with whispers about the return of the heiress. Caleb worked the room, shaking hands, flashing his charismatic smile, but his palms were sweating. He scanned the VIP balcony, waiting for the announcement. Suddenly the music stopped. The lights dimmed, leaving only a single spotlight on the grand staircase. "Ladies and gentlemen," a voice boomed, "the CEO of Pellington Industries, Miss Genevieve Pellington." Caleb froze. Genevieve. He shook his head. Common name, he told himself. Coincidence? At the top of the stairs, a figure appeared. She wore a gown of liquid silver that clung to her body like a second skin. It was backless daring and regal. Her platinum hair was slicked back. Over her eyes, she wore a mask made of white gold filigree that covered her cheekbones, but left her piercing blue eyes and her mouth exposed. She didn't walk. She glided. Every head turned. The silence was absolute. Caleb stared. There was something about the way she moved, a ghostly familiarity. But this woman radiated power. His Genevieve, the girl who wore oversized sweaters to hide her body, who hunched her shoulders, never moved like this. This woman was a predator. She reached the bottom of the stairs, and the crowd parted. "Welcome," she said. Her voice was low, husky, and projected through the microphone with an authority that made the glass rattle. "Tonight we celebrate the future. A future where the weak are weeded out and the strong survive." Beatrice whispered in Caleb's ear. "That's her. She looks like an ice sculpture. Go. Now. Before the line forms." Caleb straightened his jacket. He took a breath and marched toward the woman in silver. Genevieve saw him coming. She saw the familiar stride, the arrogant tilt of his chin. Her heart hammered against her ribs, not from love, but from a rage so pure it felt like cold water. "Here comes the architect of my ruin," she thought. She turned to a waiter, grabbed a glass of champagne, and waited. "Miss Pellington." Caleb bowed smoothly. "I'm Caleb Sterling. Sterling and Company." Genevieve turned slowly. She looked at him through the slits of her mask. She was only inches away from him. She could smell his cologne, Santal 33. The same cologne she had saved up for 6 months to buy him for his birthday last year. "Mr. Sterling," she said. She modulated her voice, making it deeper, colder. "I've heard of you." Caleb smiled, the charm turning on full blast. "Good things. I hope I'm here to discuss the waterfront proposal. I believe my vision aligns perfectly with the Pellington legacy." "Your vision," Genevieve repeated. She took a sip of champagne, her eyes locking onto his. "I reviewed your portfolio. It's ambitious, but I hear your firm is facing some liquidity issues." Caleb's smile faltered. "Rumors, Miss Pellington. Competitors trying to undercut at me. My firm is as solid as the foundations we pour." "Is it?" She took a step closer. "Because I also heard you recently went through a restructuring, a divorce." Caleb stiffened. "That is a private matter. My ex-wife, she was mentally unstable, a drain on my resources and my focus. I had to cut her loose to fully dedicate myself to my work, to this project." Genevieve felt the glass stem in her hand threaten to snap. Mentally unstable, a drain. "It sounds like you're a man who makes hard choices," she said, her voice dripping with undetectable poison. "I do what is necessary for success," Caleb said, his voice dropping to a seductive murmur. He stepped closer, invading her personal space, a tactic he used to intimidate and charm. "I think you and I are alike, Miss Pellington. We understand that greatness requires sacrifice." "Sacrifice?" Genevieve mused. "Tell me, Mr. Sterling, what was her name, the wife you sacrificed?" Caleb blinked, confused by the question. General. She didn't matter. She didn't matter. Genevieve laughed. It was a dark, hollow sound. "Everyone matters, Mr. Sterling. Even the beggars." She signaled to Arthur, who was standing in the shadows. "I will look at your proposal, Caleb," she said, using his first name with a familiarity that made him shiver. "In fact, I want to discuss it privately. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., my office." Thank you," Caleb stammered, feeling like he had just won the lottery. "I won't disappoint you." "Oh, I know you won't," she whispered, leaning in so close her lips almost brushed his ear. "Because I already know exactly who you are." She turned and walked away, the silver dress trailing behind her like a river of mercury. Caleb stood there breathless. He felt a strange pull in his gut, a mixture of attraction and fear. Beatrice appeared at his elbow. Her eyes narrowed. "What did she say?" "I got the meeting." Caleb grinned, the arrogance returning. "She likes me. I could feel it. She's practically begging for me to take the lead." "Careful, Caleb," Beatrice hissed, watching the silver figure disappear into the VIP lounge. "That woman, she didn't look at you with desire. She looked at you like a butcher looks at a pig." "You're just jealous," Caleb scoffed, drinking his champagne. "Tomorrow, we win. And once I have the Pellington money, I'm unstoppable." He had no idea that the Pellington money was the woman who used to clip his toenails and iron his underwear, and tomorrow the butcher was sharpening her knife. The morning sun hit the glass facade of the Pellington Tower, turning the building into a pillar of fire. Caleb Sterling stood on the sidewalk, shielding his eyes. He checked his reflection in a shop window. Navy suit bespoke, tie silk, hair perfect. He looked like a winner. He didn't feel like one. His phone buzzed. It was a text from the bank, final notice mortgage payment overdue. Foreclosure proceedings initiate in 24 hours. He swallowed the bile rising in his throat, shoved the phone into his pocket, and marched into the lobby. "Mr. Sterling," the receptionist said, not even looking up from her screen. "Top floor. Mr. Graves will escort you." Arthur Graves was waiting by the elevator. The old lawyer's face was unreadable, a mask of professional indifference. "Mr. Graves," Caleb said, extending a hand. "Good to see you again. Is Miss Pellington ready?" Arthur looked at the hand, then up at Caleb's face. He didn't shake it. "She is waiting. And Mr. Sterling, a word of advice. Yes. Do not lie to her. She has a very low tolerance for fiction." Caleb laughed nervously. "I'm a businessman, Arthur. I deal in facts. We shall see." The elevator ride was agonizingly slow. When the doors finally opened, Caleb walked down the long corridor toward the double doors at the end. He took a deep breath, fixed a charming smile on his face, and pushed the doors open. The office was massive. It occupied the entire corner of the building with panoramic views of the city, including the waterfront he wanted to build on. In the center of the room sat a desk the size of a small car. Behind it, a high-backed leather chair was turned away from him, facing the window. "Miss Pellington," Caleb said, his voice smooth, projecting confidence. "It is an honor to finally meet you in the light of day." The chair didn't move. "Your grandfather built this city," Caleb continued, walking closer, placing his leather portfolio on the desk. "And I intend to help you modernize his legacy. I have the blueprints here. The Skyline project isn't just a building. It's a statement." "A statement," a voice came from the chair. It wasn't the deep, husky voice from the masquerade. It was softer, yet colder, familiar. "Like the statement you made 3 days ago, you're a leech. Go back to the gutter." Caleb froze. The blood drained from his face so fast it left him dizzy. He knew that voice. He had heard it every morning for 3 years. He had heard it whisper, "I love you, and I'm sorry," 1,000 times. "No," he whispered. "It's not possible." The leather chair slowly spun around. Genevieve sat there. She wasn't wearing a mask. She wasn't wearing the silver gown. She was wearing a crisp white power suit that made her skin look porcelain. Her platinum hair was sharp, her makeup flawless. But the eyes, those sad blue eyes that used to look at him with adoration, were now looking at him with the precision of a sniper scope. "Hello, Caleb," she said. Caleb stumbled back, his legs hitting the edge of a chair. He grabbed it for support. "Jen, what are you doing here? How did you get in here?" "I didn't get in here, Caleb. I was born here." She picked up a crystal paperweight and idly turned it in her hand. "You're looking for the CEO of Pellington Industries. You're looking for the heir to the empire. You're looking for the woman who holds your fate in her hands." She slammed the paperweight down. Crack. "You're looking at your wife. This is a joke." Caleb stammered, his brain misfiring. "You're a waitress. You're a nobody. I found you in a diner. You didn't even have a winter coat." "I was hiding," Genevieve said, standing up. She walked around the desk, her heels clicking rhythmically. "I was hiding from a life that wanted to consume me. I wanted to be loved for me. Caleb, not for my name, not for my money. I thought I found that with you. I thought you loved the quiet girl who made your coffee and listened to your dreams." She stopped inches from him. He smelled her perfume, expensive, rare, nothing like the vanilla body spray she used to wear. "But you didn't love me, did you?" she asked softly. "Jen, listen." Caleb began his survival instinct kicking in. He tried to reach for her hand, but she stepped back as if he were contagious. "I was under pressure, the business, the debts. I pushed you away to protect you. I didn't want to drag you down with me." "Protect me?" Genevieve laughed, and the sound was like glass breaking. "You threw me onto the street in a thunderstorm with a trash bag. You called me a beggar. You told me I was nothing. I was angry. People say things they don't mean when they're stressed." Caleb's voice rose, desperate. "But look at you now. You're magnificent. If I had known, if you had told me, if I had told you," Genevieve cut him off, "if I had told you I was worth billions, you would have treated me like a queen. And that is exactly why you don't deserve me. You only respect value when it has a dollar sign attached to it." She walked back to her desk and pressed a button on the intercom. "Arthur, bring in the file." Arthur Graves entered, carrying a thick black folder. He placed it on the desk and opened it. "Sit down, Caleb," Genevieve commanded. Caleb sat. He felt small. "Let's talk business," Genevieve said, her voice shifting into CEO mode. "You are here for the waterfront contract. The answer is no." "You can't do that," Caleb protested weakly. "It's the best design. I can do whatever I want. It's my land. But that's the least of your problems." She slid a document across the desk. "Recognize this." Caleb looked. It was the loan document from the regional bank, the one he had forged her signature on. "I don't know what that is." "Lie to me again, and I call the FBI right now," Genevieve said. Her voice was deadly calm. "This is a loan for $2 million, guaranteed by Genevieve Sterling." "But Genevieve Sterling didn't sign this. You did." Caleb was sweating profusely now. "It was a formality. We were married. What's mine is yours, and what's yours is now mine," she corrected. "Because you see, Caleb, I didn't just inherit Pellington Industries. I recently made a personal acquisition. I bought Nemesis Holdings." Caleb stared at her blankly. "Nemesis Holdings," Arthur Graves explained dryly, "is the parent company that acquired First Regional Bank yesterday morning. We now own your mortgage. We own your business loans. We own your car lease. And we own this fraudulent document." Caleb's mouth fell open. "You bought my bank. I bought your debt," Genevieve said. "You owe me $4 million, Caleb. Immediate payment." I don't have it. You know I don't have it. Then I'm afraid we'll have to liquidate your assets, she said, checking her watch. Actually, the process started 10 minutes ago. Caleb stood up his chair, toppling over. You can't do this. I'm your husband. Ex-husband, she corrected. Or soon to be. And don't worry about the divorce settlement. I have a team of 50 lawyers who are currently proving that our marriage was based on fraud, which invalidates any claim you have to my assets. But you committed a felony forgery against me. She leaned across the desk, her eyes blazing. You wanted a beggar, Caleb. You wanted someone with nothing. Congratulations. I'm granting your wish. By the time I'm done with you, the only thing you'll own is the regret of the day you threw me out. Jen, please. Caleb fell to his knees. The arrogance was gone. He was crying now, ugly, terrified tears. Please, I'm sorry. I love you. Give me another chance. I'll change. I'll be the man you want. Genevieve looked down at him. For a second, a flicker of the old Jen appeared, the pity, the kindness. But then she remembered the cold rain. She remembered the door slamming. She remembered Beatrice's laugh. Get up, she said with disgust. You're ruining my carpet. She pressed the intercom. Security. Remove Mr. Sterling from the building. And make sure he takes the trash bag waiting for him in the lobby. It contains his personal effects from his office. We just foreclosed on that, too. 2 burly guards entered and hoisted Caleb up by his armpits. As they dragged him out, screaming her name, Genevieve didn't look away. She watched until the doors closed. Then, and only then, did her hand tremble. She sat down, took a deep breath, and looked at Arthur. What's next? Miss Galloway, Arthur said. She's in the lobby, waiting for Mr. Sterling. She doesn't know yet. Genevieve's lips curled into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Let her in. Beatrice Galloway was not used to waiting. She tapped her Prada heel against the marble floor of the Pellington lobby, checking her gold Rolex for the 5th time. Caleb had been up there for an hour. He must have closed the deal, she thought smugly. They're probably popping champagne. When the elevator doors finally opened, she fixed her smile, ready to greet her victorious lover. But it wasn't a victor who emerged. It was a broken man being dragged by 2 security guards. Caleb's tie was undone. His face was red and wet with tears, and he was clutching a black trash bag. Caleb, Beatrice gasped, stepping forward. What the hell is going on? Unhand him. The guards ignored her, depositing Caleb on the sidewalk outside the revolving doors like a sack of unwanted mail. Beatrice ran out after him. Caleb? What happened? Did you get the contract? Caleb looked up at her from the pavement. His eyes were wild. It's her B. It's her. Who the Pellington heir? Jen. Caleb choked out. The heir is Jen. My wife. The beggar. Beatrice stared at him. You've lost your mind. The stress has finally cracked you. Your wife is a waitress. No, a voice called out from the entrance. Beatrice turned. Standing just inside the glass doors, protected from the noise of the street, was the woman in the white suit. She held a phone to her ear. Miss Galloway, Genevieve said, her voice amplified by the silence that seemed to fall over the immediate area. I believe you're looking for a new investment. Beatrice walked up to the glass. She recognized the face. She had seen it in photos Caleb kept in a drawer, photos of a plain, dowdy woman. But this was a titan. You, Beatrice whispered, you're the Pellington girl. And you are the woman financing my husband's debt, Genevieve said. I have bad news, Beatrice. I just called your father. Beatrice paled. You spoke to Daddy. I did. We have a lot of business together, shipping lanes in the Pacific. I informed him that his daughter was co-signing loans for a man who is currently under investigation for bank fraud and forgery. I also informed him that if he continues to back Caleb Sterling, Pellington Industries will pull all contractors, all from Morse Galloway here. Deal. Beatrice's phone rang. It was her father. She didn't need to answer to know what the ringtone meant. It was the sound of the cut-off. "You bitch!" Beatrice hissed, her composure cracking. "You set us up." "I didn't do anything," Genevieve said calmly. "I just stopped saving you from yourselves." Beatrice looked down at Caleb, who was trying to stand up, reaching for her leg. "B, help me. We can fix this. We just need to—" "Don't touch me!" Beatrice shrieked, kicking his hand away. "You idiot! You lied to me! You said she was nobody! You said she was trash!" "She is," Caleb cried. She's a billionaire, you moron!" Beatrice screamed. "And you just cost me my trust fund," Beatrice answered her ringing phone. "Daddy, no. Daddy, please. I didn't know. He tricked me." "Yes, I'm leaving him right now." She hung up and looked at Caleb with pure venom. "It's over, Caleb. My father cut the line of credit. The apartment is in my name. You're not coming back there. I don't date losers." Beatrice signaled for her driver. A black limo pulled up. She got in without a backward glance. Caleb was left alone on the sidewalk. The paparazzi had arrived, tipped off by an anonymous source. Arthur, they swarmed the scene. Flashes blinded him. "Mr. Sterling, is it true you're being charged with fraud? Is it true your wife is Genevieve Pellington? How does it feel to be the man who divorced the richest woman in New York?" Caleb covered his face with his hands, shielding himself with the trash bag, the same bag he had forced Genevieve to pack 3 days ago. From the high tower window, Genevieve watched the scene below. She didn't feel joy. She didn't feel triumph. She felt a heavy, final closure. "The police are on their way to pick him up," Arthur said gently from behind her. "The DA is very interested in the forgery charges. He's looking at 5 years minimum." Genevieve turned away from the window. "It's done." "Not quite," Arthur said. "There is one last thing. Caleb's mother. She's in the lobby. She claims she wants to speak to her daughter-in-law." Genevieve stiffened. Martha Sterling. The woman who had made Genevieve's life a living hell for 3 years. Martha, who criticized her cooking, her clothes, her lack of family, and constantly told Caleb he could do better. "Send her up," Genevieve said. "Let's finish this family reunion." Martha Sterling walked into the office, clutching her pearl necklace, her eyes darting around the opulent room. When she saw Genevieve, her face twisted into a grotesque mask of fake affection. "Genevieve, darling," Martha cried, rushing forward with open arms. "Oh my goodness, I told Caleb, I said, 'Caleb, you are making a mistake.' Oh, look at you, you look stunning. I always knew you had class." "I always told Caleb she has good bones." Genevieve didn't move. She let Martha hug her stiff frame, then stepped back. "Hello, Martha." "Oh, honey, this is all a terrible misunderstanding," Martha babbled. "Caleb, he's a fool, but he loves you. We're family. You can't let them take him to jail. Think of the scandal. Think of us." "I am thinking of us," Genevieve said. "I'm thinking of the Christmas you made me sit at the children's table because the adults were talking business. I'm thinking of the time you threw away the sweater I knitted for you because it itched. I'm thinking of how you told Caleb I was barren and he should leave me." Martha's face went pale. "I was just concerned I wanted grandchildren." "Well, you won't be getting them from me," Genevieve said. "And you won't be getting them from Caleb where he is going." "You ungrateful little—" Martha's mask slipped. "We took you in. We gave you a home." I was your servant, Martha, not your family. Genevieve walked to her desk and picked up a checkbook. She wrote a check and tore it out. Here, she said, holding it out. Martha looked at it. Her eyes widened. It was for $500. What is this? Martha spat. It's the severance Caleb gave me, Genevieve said. I'm returning it. I believe you'll need it for his bail bond, though I doubt it will cover much. She dropped the check on the floor. Arthur escort Mrs. Sterling out, and inform the front desk that neither she nor her son are ever allowed on Pellington property again. As Martha was ushered out, screaming obscenities, Genevieve finally sat down. The silence returned to the office. It was over. The toxic weeds had been pulled from her life. But now she was alone at the top of the tower. Are you all right, Genevieve? Arthur asked, his voice filled with paternal concern. Genevieve looked at the empty chair where Caleb had sat. She looked at the city below. I'm free, Arthur, she whispered. For the first time in my life, I'm actually free. What will you do now? Genevieve stood up. She walked to the window and placed her hand on the glass. The storm had passed. The sky was blue. Now, she said, a genuine smile finally touching her lips. Now I build, not for a husband, not for a grandfather, for me. 6 months had passed since the day Caleb Sterling was dragged out of the Pellington Tower. The seasons had changed, turning the biting cold of winter into the humid embrace of a New York summer. But the heat inside the Rikers Island visitation room was of a different kind, stagnant smelling of industrial cleaner and despair. Caleb sat behind the plexiglass. His custom-tailored suits were gone, replaced by a grey jumpsuit that hung loosely on his frame. He had lost 20 pounds. The arrogance that once defined his jawline had dissolved into a perpetual slack-jawed expression of disbelief. He wasn't waiting for a visitor. No one came to see him. Beatrice had fled to Paris the day after the scandal broke, reportedly engaging herself to a duke within a month to salvage her social standing. His mother, Martha, had moved to a small condo in Florida, too ashamed to show her face in Seattle or New York, blaming Caleb for ruining the family name in every phone call she deigned to answer. Caleb was watching the small television mounted in the corner of the common room. It was the only window he had to the world he used to think he owned. The news anchor's voice crackled through the static. And finally today, the unveiling of the transformative Haven project on the waterfront. Spearheaded by Pellington Industries, CEO, Genevieve Pellington. The project has turned the derelict docklands into a massive green space affordable housing complex and art district. Caleb leaned forward, squinting. On the screen, there she was, Genevieve. She stood at a podium, the wind catching her white silk trench coat. She looked radiant, strong. The camera zoomed in as she cut the red ribbon with a pair of golden scissors. Beside her sat her grandfather Silas, looking frail but smiling with a pride that Caleb had never seen directed at anyone. This isn't just about buildings, Genevieve said into the microphone, her voice confident and clear. It's about giving people a place to stand when the ground beneath them feels shaky. It's about value. Not the value of real estate, but the value of human dignity. Caleb felt a physical blow to his chest. That was his sight. That was his dream. But the design, it was beautiful. It was far better than the cold glass monoliths he had planned. It was warm. It was human. It was everything he lacked. A fellow inmate, a rough man with a tattoo on his neck, laughed and pointed at the screen. That's a real woman right there. Look at that ice. She's untouchable. Imagine being the guy dumb enough to lose her. Caleb closed his eyes. He didn't have to imagine. Meanwhile, atop the completed Haven Tower, Genevieve stood on the observation deck. The wind whipped her hair, but she didn't shiver. She felt an unshakable warmth in her core. Arthur Graves stepped up beside her, handing her a tablet. The stock closed at an all-time high, Genevieve. The board is eating out of your hand. And... He paused, a small smile playing on his lips. We received the final foreclosure papers on the Sterling firm. The liquidation is complete. The proceeds have been donated to the city's shelter program as you requested. Good, Genevieve said, not looking away from the horizon. Do you ever think about him? Arthur asked quietly. It was the one question no one dared to ask. Genevieve looked down at the city. She saw the tiny yellow cabs, the rushing people, the invisible lives being lived in the canyons of steel. Somewhere down there, in a cell, was a man who had defined her worth by a price tag. I think about the girl he created, she said softly. The girl who was afraid to speak. The girl who thought love was something you had to beg for. I think about her, and I mourn her. But him no, Arthur. I don't think about him. He was just a lesson. A very expensive, painful lesson. And what did you learn? Genevieve turned to face him. Her blue eyes were clear, reflecting the endless sky. I learned that a queen doesn't need a king to build an empire. She just needs to remember who she is. She walked back toward the elevator, her heels clicking with a rhythm that sounded like victory. Come on, Arthur, she said, checking her watch. I have a meeting with the Japanese investors, and then I'm taking my grandfather to dinner. He wants to try that diner on I-5. He says he wants to see where I found my strength. Arthur chuckled. The diner. It's a bit rustic for Silas Pellington. He'll love it. Genevieve smiled. They make excellent pie. And besides, it's not about the place. It's about the company. As the elevator doors closed, shutting out the noise of the world, Genevieve Pellington, the wife, the beggar, the heir, the survivor, caught her reflection in the polished steel doors. She didn't adjust her hair. She didn't check her makeup. She just winked. The storm was over. The rain had begun. And that is the story of Genevieve Pellington and Caleb Sterling. It's a powerful reminder that we should never judge a book by its cover or a person by their current circumstances. Caleb thought he was throwing away a beggar someone beneath him, only to discover too late that he had discarded the most valuable thing he would ever touch. He chased wealth and status blind to the fact that true loyalty and love are the only riches that really matter. In the end, Genevieve didn't just inherit an empire. She built herself into a fortress that no one could ever tear down again. If you enjoyed this story of justice, karma, and rising from the ashes, please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share this with a friend who needs a reminder of their own worth, and hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Who should we write about next? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.